Assalamu alaikum, everyone. And I hope everyone is having a good week so far. Today, I'm going to be talking briefly about the topic of seeking knowledge, especially for new converts. So, I have 3 specific questions to address, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about just some concepts and some ideas of how to prioritize your knowledge gathering when you first convert to Islam, inshallah. So I'm going to read one of the messages I got. The first one: how does one set the right priority for subjects to learn and study about Islam? I understand that Salah is the top priority. One should continue with other pillars of Islam like Hajj and Zakah. Even if I don't pay Zakah, nor can I, or I'm sorry, the answer is, should I continue to focus on other pillars, even if you can't fulfill them, if you can't go on Zakah or go on Hajj or pay Zakah? My goodness. Or would it be better to, for example, to study the life of Prophet Muhammad? Okay, so there are a couple really good points to address here. First of all, you are absolutely right. Learning to pray, I think, is a really good priority to focus on. And yes, you can absolutely continue, and you should continue with the other pillars of Islam. Obviously, you can't be Muslim without the first pillar, which is, belief in La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. So obviously, you're going to be continuing with that pillar no matter what. I think that focusing on learning to pray is a great starting point. And I just recently wrote an article about this. I don't know if it was published on the Facebook page yet, but it is on About Islam. It should be on About Islam's website, where a woman who's interested in Islam was asking if it's okay to pray in her own language for a while, since Arabic is so difficult. And that is actually another thing that we'll talk about later. And the general consensus, though, praying in Arabic is really emphasized for the sake of unity and cohesiveness of message. The words in Arabic are the same. There's no different version of the words in Arabic. Fatiha is Fatiha, and that's it. So that's why praying in Arabic is better, because you're saying the same thing. But generally speaking, scholars agree that while you're learning and while you're getting used to it, you can pray in your own language. It's better to pray in your own language than not pray at all. And one thing that I think is a real benefit to us converts is, as we're learning to pray in Arabic, and we're kind of transitioning over from our own language, it really helps us to get a deeper meaning of the words. A lot of people who grew up with these prayers and who don't know Arabic are just saying the words. And to be entirely honest, I've been Muslim for about 9.5 years, and that doesn't entirely, what am I saying? Once you do get used to saying the words, it does sort of become routine. You think about it less, but we do have that advantage of knowing exactly what we're saying. Anyway, I'm kind of digressing and going off topic. I'll circle back to prayers in a bit. But as I was saying, learning to pray, learning Salah is a really good place to start. Also, next year when Ramadan rolls around, of course, you'll want to partake in fasting, unless you have, a medical reason not to. And of course, you wouldn't do that. But yeah, focus on the 3 other pillars. If you are not, if you're in a financial position where you're not required to pay zakah, then don't. And Hajj is, while of course we all hope to go on Hajj one day, that I would say, especially for a new convert, is not really top priority unless you happen to have the funds, in which case you are probably eligible to be paying zakah anyway. So that's kind of a big and long roundabout way of saying, yes, focus on the other pillars. I think, as a matter of fact, it's a perfect place to start. And what you might want to do is, I don't, I sometimes take it for granted that people can read Arabic letters. I don't speak Arabic, but I can read the letters. So um, for some reason, I assume that that's the norm, even though it's not. If you are like most new converts and you can't read Arabic letters, transliterated Qurans do exist. So, alhamdulillah for this amazing 21st century and for Google, because you can just Google transliterated Quran. And I have seen, I saw in Barnes and Noble back when that was still a thing around me, there was a copy of the Quran in translation that had each page divided into 3 columns. One was Arabic, one was the transliteration, which means the pronunciation of the Arabic words transcribed into English letters, so that, or not English letters, but you know what I mean, um, so that you can understand the sounds that you're supposed to be making because you don't know the Arabic letters and it's nonsensical. And then next to that was the translation, so you can understand what you're actually saying, which I think is really important. So if you can get your hands on a Quran like that, that'd be great. And what you might want to do is flip to the back of it and start memorizing the small surahs, the small chapters and verses. And don't rush yourself. Don't get ahead of yourself. Don't push yourself too hard. I mean, you obviously want to be learning about Islam as much as you can, but if you try and take on too much too fast, you'll get overwhelmed. Take it from someone who took on too much too fast. You will get overwhelmed. I would start trying to learn the Arabic for completing prayer, for completing salah, one line at a time. One line at a time in Arabic, and then finish the rest in English. And when you're done with that, then learn a few verses of Quran. Again, just one line at a time, or even a half line at a time if it's daunting for you. I also encourage you to research some Islamic scholars. This can be kind of hit or miss because there are some really good ones out there. I think Omar Suleiman is my absolute favorite, and he is very involved in current events and social justice issues that affect Muslims and non-Muslims alike. I think he's a great scholar and a great person, mashallah, Allah reward him. So looking up Omar Suleiman, Sahib Web is also a pretty good one as well. Ask convert friends, if you have any, for recommendations on scholars that they like to follow. And you can learn about Islamic history. I think studying the life of the Prophet is also a really good idea. You can learn about all that from YouTube videos of these different scholars. I do want to reiterate caution, because if I may quote the Bible at us for a second, we want to beware of wolves in sheep's clothing. I believe it's from the Bible, right? There are a lot of Islamic scholars out there who have these huge reputations and are found out to be charlatans, or they're involved in some sort of disreputable scandal, which is, everyone's human, but you can't be preaching about righteousness and morality if you're not going to be living up to the word. Anyway, and you also want to be aware of people who will be spreading un-Islamic ideas in the guise of Islam. Really, like, a red flag is, women's issues. It's always easy to tell if someone's worth your time if you listen to a lecture about what they think about women. And if it sounds like it belongs in medieval times Europe, then run the other direction. So I'm going to move on to the next question. If there's any follow-up to that, if there's a comment section, feel free to drop a comment. So the next one is from someone named Adam, who's a 20-year-old convert to Islam, And he says that the mosque he goes to for the Friday prayers, the one that's near him, they do the Friday speech in Urdu. He can't understand anything. There are no English-speaking mosques around where he lives in the UK. So his question is, should he still go to Jummah even if he doesn't understand what's being said, or can he replace it by watching Friday speeches in English on YouTube? That's a great question, and it's a bit fraught. I'm going to break it down a little bit. Okay, for the first part, when we're addressing doing the Friday speech in another language aside from whatever the predominant language in your area is, I am of two minds. On one hand, it makes sense to do the speech in Urdu if you're catering to a largely Urdu-speaking population, especially because there are probably some people in that area who don't speak English, or at least don't speak English very well. So it does make sense. However, that also creates a really exclusive environment. And our mosques aren't supposed to be divided on national lines. They often are. Who hasn't heard of like the Pakistani mosque versus, the Syrian mosque versus, the Malaysian mosque or whatever it may be? That is often how it is. It's not how it's supposed to be. So in that way, it seems more beneficial to give this sermon in the language spoken in the area. But again, I can see both sides of this. But to address Adam's concern, first of all, Adam, welcome to Islam. MashaAllah, alhamdulillah, may Allah guide you and keep you close to him. Ameen. What I would recommend you do, because it is my understanding, and again, I am not a scholar. I am backing up what I say with 9.5 years of being Muslim, which doesn't make me perfect or like amazingly knowledgeable, but it is my understanding that attending the Friday prayer and praying in congregation is an obligation for men. So you will want to continue going to prayer. It is also my understanding that it is a congregational prayer that is obligatory, not necessarily listening to the speech. I could be wrong about that. However, whether or not I am, it is my understanding that as long as you pray in congregation and attend the congregational prayer, you're fulfilling your obligation. And what I would suggest to you or to anyone else in a similar situation is if you go and you can't understand what's being said, then yeah, go home and watch some YouTube lectures. I think that's a perfect solution. You're fulfilling your obligation of the congregational prayer, and you're still benefiting from Islamic knowledge. I also implore mosques to be more inclusive. I know this is another contentious issue because apparently, I didn't even realize this, but apparently it's controversial whether mosques can do 2 different congregational prayers on Fridays. I never knew that it was an issue. I don't see why not, but that's neither here nor there. If you are on the board of a mosque and for whatever reason you're watching my little video here, I would encourage you to maybe do, if you've got a really large population in your area that's, for example, Urdu speaking, and they may not speak English, then maybe consider doing, half, because the sermon has 2 halves, right? Half of it in Urdu, half in English. Or if you're of the mind that you can do 2 different, sermons, do one in Urdu and one in English. I don't know. But I do really get that need to feel included, not just, as a convert, yes, it's extremely important. This is something that's near and dear to my heart, is including converts in the Muslim space. So you don't want to be having an environment that is exclusive, that is for Pakistanis only. On the other hand, of course, like as an immigrant, as someone who's outside of their comfort zone, you want to make sure that you're providing people in the area a space where they are in their comfort zone. So, like I said, I'm of 2 minds. So, to sum up, because I do tend to go off on these little like rabbit trails of randomness, I think that if you are attending a mosque for Friday prayers and the Friday prayer is in a language you don't understand, then supplementing at home with YouTube videos is perfect. So, the next one is kind of circling back to what I spoke about in the beginning. So it says Arabic is an incredibly hard language, yet there is a lot of pressure to learn it in order to pray or read Quran. Is it really necessary? Surely understanding in our own language is much better. I have yet to meet, I know one convert who has learned Arabic, and she learned Iraqi Arabic. So that doesn't really help with understanding the Quran. Not only is Arabic, in the way that it's spoken in everyday life, a difficult language to learn for English speakers because it's not very similar to English, but also classical Arabic is adding a couple extra layers of difficulty onto that. Well, Arabic speakers definitely have an advantage in that, the Quran is in Arabic, but without, I mean, this might not be a really direct correlation, but think of it like if if the if the Quran were English and it was in Shakespearean English, like you understand what's being said, but it's not, but you have to think about it a little bit. It's not the way that you talk every day. No one's going around with wherefore art thou and all that anymore. It's an ancient form of the language. Shakespearean isn't technically ancient, but you get what I'm saying. So I understand that there is this pressure on converts to learn Arabic, and it's a little bit mysterious to me. I mean, I am a language nerd. Like, I speak 2 languages and like a smattering of like an 8 of other languages. So I want to say, yes, learn Arabic, learn it. You have to learn it. I don't know it, but that's again off on randomness. But it is a difficult language, and I don't think that should be a priority. In my opinion, learning Arabic is not of utmost importance. As I mentioned before, the importance of Arabic in terms of acts of worship is in the unified message. Again, to just sort of draw a little parallel, like how there are so many different versions of the Bible. That isn't how it is with the Quran. The Quran, it has one unified Arabic message, and that is why Arabic is seen as so important. That's why we pray in Arabic, because we're all saying the exact same thing, and we know that rather than, in this version of the Bible it seems to say this, but in another version it seems to say that. That's the importance of Arabic. Even if you learn, I think in most classrooms when it's teaching Arabic, Egyptian Arabic, even if you learn Egyptian Arabic, you're still not going to have the deep understanding of the Quran. So again, this is my really roundabout way of saying that while trying to get an understanding of the Quran is extremely important, learning the language of Arabic, I don't think it's as important. If you can, amazing. Alhamdulillah, I hope to learn Arabic, but it can't be seen as the be-all and end-all. That just creates a barrier. And really, as Muslims, if we hear that someone wants to become Muslim, we don't want to like say, oh yeah, but you have to learn another language. It's not true. That's simply not true. I am of the mind that praying in Arabic is important. I can't say whether or not it's required. Even some classical scholars had disagreements about that. So that's not my place to say whether or not it's required. I think it's important, again, just to go back to that unified message. That's, one discussion that I had with my dad when I first converted. He was like, yeah, but you're doing this, the other Muslims do that because they have a different version of the Quran. And I was like, no, man, the Quran is not like the Bible. It's not like that. So to me, the unified message is really near and dear to my heart. So I do recommend, like I mentioned earlier, and I'll just restate it really quickly, learning to pray in Arabic, just one line or a half line at a time, and finishing the rest in English, and then learn as you go. that way, like I said, and I'm sorry for people who've been with me the whole time, I'm going to repeat myself real quick. That way you do have the benefit of knowing what you're saying when you're saying it, but you have, also the benefit of having that unified message. You know that this is one of the things that is just like subhanAllah, so amazing about Islam. Like every single Muslim, when they are facing their prayer mat towards the direction of Mecca, they are all saying the same thing. And I think that's subhanAllah, that's amazing. Let's see, and my conclusion about that. Yeah, so I think there are more important priorities to learning language than learning languages, which is really, if you knew me in real life, you know that's a real big thing for me to say because I love languages. So I've got about 10 minutes or so left. It doesn't look like there are any relevant questions in the comments. I'm not going to be answering any personal questions. If anyone has any relevant questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments. While I'm waiting to see if any pop up, I am going to talk a little bit more about gaining knowledge as a new convert. And one particularly present and prevalent issue that is also something I'm really passionate about. So to start off, general gaining knowledge, again, I said it once and I'll say it again, alhamdulillah, like we live in this amazing, amazing time. People like to complain about technology, but you should really, look at this. This is my phone. Harry Potter on the back, never mind about that. This little device here, if I wanted to, I could look up almost anything in the world just by opening up my phone and putting it into a search engine. It's amazing. So take advantage of that. There is always this caveat: be careful with Google because it's all there. The good, the bad, and the ugly, it's all there. But we do have this incredibly advantageous time where we don't have to seek out, we don't have to dedicate 10 years of our life to living in an Islamic school and studying under a scholar and etc. We're able to learn about Islam from the comfort of our own home, which is also really important because this isn't like in old times. Like, we've got bills to pay, we've got rent to pay, we've got to pay our insurance, we have to pay it unless you're one of those lucky people that lives in the universal healthcare countries. We have to pay for health insurance. So practically speaking, we don't have the resources to be able to dedicate ourselves to full-time Islamic scholarship. Except for, a lucky elite, I guess. So take advantage of this amazing device and learn to your heart's content. YouTube videos, again, be careful. Find out some good scholars ahead of time. I mentioned Omar Suleiman and Sahib Webb are two that I've learned a lot from. And look up their lectures. And, if you have questions, come to About Islam and submit the questions to us. We're really happy to help. If you're, it's one of the things I'm passionate about, is helping new Muslims to navigate the oftentimes murky waters of Islam and find the knowledge that you're seeking. So if you're lucky enough to have a welcoming Muslim community, which is fewer and farther between than it should be, but not unheard of, then avail yourself of your mosque or your Muslim friends, or if you're in university, the Muslim Students Association. I find talking to people and getting answers from people and having a discussion where I can ask questions and have answers, that's the easiest and best way. Again, I don't have the luxury of time to be able to always do that, so my phone comes in handy quite a lot or my computer, or whatever it is that is convenient to me at the time. But alhamdulillah, there aren't that many barriers to acquiring Islamic knowledge. I think the biggest constraint that we face is being able to weed through and sort out, like the good from the bad, which can be really challenging for a new Muslim. So take everything that you learn with a grain of salt. If it doesn't sound right, or if someone is telling you someone and can't provide knowledge or evidence to back it up, don't take it as divine wisdom. If you are feeling in doubt, Google it with the word like hadith or Quran attached to it, and see if you can see anything from the Sunnah of the Prophet or from the Quran. And I saved this for last. I probably should have done it when more people were watching earlier, but here's the big one. If you are a new convert, don't get married. Do not do it. For some inexplicable reason, and it's not really inexplicable. I know the justifications people use for it, and this is especially true for female converts. When you convert, there's all of a sudden this like, oh my gosh, you have to get married. You have to get married right away. It's just like marriage is such a contentious issue in Islam. And I'm going to go ahead and come out and say this, and I feel comfortable saying this because About Islam has posted articles that support this. Marriage is not required. It is sunnah. Sunnah is not the same thing as required. It is an amazing sunnah to fulfill, but you should not just jump into a new faith and decide that that's the sunnah that you're going to fulfill. Fulfill the sunnah prayers, learn how to pray, experience your first, I like to say that spend at least a year as a Muslim before you get married. Honestly, it's probably better to wait longer, because you want to get your footing. And I think there's this expectation, and it's a kind of a two-sided thing. Like, and I'm obviously coming at this from the woman's perspective, and I'm sure it happens to men too. But what do I know? I'm not a man, so you guys sort your issues. For women, first of all, people come at us like, it's haram not to be married, which is ridiculous and is not true. And for another thing, we have this expectation like, oh, we're going to get married to, some Arabic guy or some Pakistani guy or whatever, and he's going to teach us all about Islam, but that's not always true. Like, a lot of people, and I would say honestly, the majority of people have so much cultural baggage that comes with their version of Islam and as a new convert, you are vulnerable to that. You are vulnerable to hearing someone say like, oh yeah, such and such a ridiculous thing is Islam, when really it's not. But you don't know any better because you're a new convert. And then on the other side of it, these men are marrying these women. There are a couple different ways it can go. For one, we'll just go ahead and get like the devious one out of the way. Like, oh, I'm going to marry this naive young woman and just tell her whatever I want. She'll do what I say because, she doesn't know any better. Gosh, those people are awful. Stay away from them. Then there's also, this expectation that's a bit more insidious. I think with some work it can be overcome, but it has to, be a committed relationship with both of you, willing to make compromises together. And that is, these men will look at a convert and say like, wow, she took a really great step. She must be such a good Muslim. And they expect you to know your deen and be perfect in it. And for those of you who are new or aren't Muslim, deen means religion. So they expect you to know your religion perfectly. And frankly, I think there is no Muslim alive now or at the time of the Prophet, except for the Prophet himself, who knew Islam perfectly. Like, no one does. Certainly not in this day and age. And yet, we come into these marriages with expectations that because we took this leap and converted, that we're going to know a lot already. And then inevitably we're some sort of awful disappointment when, you know, we don't know how to pray, or we are really bad at fasting, guilty, or, you know, whatever it may be. And, you know, men think that women who convert to Islam are like, you know, without pasts of their own. And that's not fair, and it's not true. So anyway, all this to say that as a new convert, the first thing you should do is learn to pray, in my opinion. And the last thing you should do is get married, no matter how great it may seem. I got married a week after I converted, and it didn't work. You know, the marriage ended. So I'm not speaking out of lack of knowledge here. So take that as you will. So I'm a little bit over my time now, so I'm going to be drawing this to a close. Thank you, everyone who was watching, and thank you for those of you who were, you know, cheering me on in the comments as I was going. I appreciate it. Inshallah, everyone is enjoying their summer, unless you're in the Southern Hemisphere, in which case I hope you're enjoying winter. And inshallah, I will you know, talk to you all again next time I do one of these. Assalamu alaikum.